Hello everyone and a very warm welcome to another lesson. In this lesson, we are going to learn about IELTS speaking parts 2 and 3. Our topic is going to be a time when you are scared or afraid. A time when you were scared or afraid. In this lesson, we're going to look at some questions and some sample answers. I'm also going to explain all the vocabulary and idiomatic expressions that I'm going to use in the sample answers. Now, let's begin with part 2 questions. Part 2. Describe a time when you were scared or afraid. You should say A. When and where it happened. When and where it happened. In this first question, you have two parts. You have when and where. So you have to make sure that you give an answer to both parts of the questions, when and where. Now, to answer this question, you can say sample answer 1. It was last week on Saturday night at around 11 p.m. while I was walking from the bus stop on my way home from visiting my best friend Rex when I had the most scary encounter that made my blood run cold. It was last week on Saturday night at around 11 p.m. while I was walking from the bus stop on my way home from visiting my best friend Rex when I had the most scary encounter that made my blood run cold. Now, in that sample answer, I identified when it happened. It was last week on Saturday night at around 11 p.m. I explained where it happened. I was walking from the bus stop on my way home from visiting my best friend Rex. Okay, when I had the most scary encounter that made my blood run cold. Now, in that first sample answer, I have used a number of linking words. You can see them in blue. I have used while, when, and that. I have also used an idiomatic expression that is going to help you score a higher band, made my blood run cold. Now we use this idiomatic expression to mean that something scared you. It made my blood run cold. It means that it made me very afraid, very scared. It made my blood run cold. It made me very scared. Now, let's move on to sample answer 2. When and where it happened. It was yesterday evening whilst walking in a dark alley not too far from home when suddenly I almost jumped out of my skin with fear. It was yesterday evening whilst walking in a dark alley not too far from home when suddenly I almost jumped out of my skin with fear. Again, in that sample answer, I identified when it happened. It was yesterday evening whilst, okay, and then where it happened, okay. It happened whilst I was walking in a dark alley not too far from home. Now, in that sample answer, I have used the linking word whilst. Whilst means while. If you want to score a band 9, then instead of using while, use whilst. I also use the linking word when, and I use the idiomatic expression jumped out of my skin. I almost jumped out of my skin with fear. When you say you almost jumped out of your skin, it means that you are absolutely terrified. You are so afraid. You almost jumped out of your skin. You are terrified. Now, let's move on to the second part of Part B question. Who you are with. Who you are with. In this question, the examiner wants you to tell him or her who was with you when you got really scared. Now, to answer this question, you can say sample answer 1. I was walking back home from the train station all by myself in the wee hours of the night. I was walking back home from the train station all by myself in the wee hours of the night. In that sample answer, I made it very clear to the examiner that I was alone, all by myself. All by myself means that you were alone. And then I used an idiomatic expression in the wee hours of the night. In the wee hours of the night. That means that it was quite late at night. It could have been maybe 2 a.m. in the morning, 3 a.m., okay, 4 a.m. That is in the wee hours of the night. That is very, very late at night. Now, let's look at sample answer 2. Who you are with. I was strolling down the dark alley with my best friend James when it all happened, leaving us both scared for our life. I was strolling down the dark alley with my best friend James when it all happened, leaving both of us scared for our life. Now, in that second sample answer, I explained to the examiner that I was with my best friend James. I used the linking word when, and I used the idiomatic expression leaving us both scared for our life. Leaving both of us scared for our life, meaning that it made both of us extremely fearful that we might die. We were scared for our life. It was a very, very threatening, life-threatening experience. Now, let's move on to C. Why you are scared. In this question, the examiner wants you to give him or her some reasons to explain why you are scared. What made you scared? What made you scared? Now, you can answer this question by saying sample answer 1. I was left shaking like a leaf when a man who was walking close to me suddenly pulled up a knife and ordered me to hand all my belongings to him or else he would stab me to death. I was left shaking like a leaf when a man who was walking close to me suddenly pulled up a knife and ordered me to hand all my belongings to him or else he would stab me to death. In that first sample answer, I have explained to the examiner why I was scared. Okay, I was left shaking like a leaf. When you're shaking like a leaf, that idiomatic expression means that you are trembling with fear. You are trembling with fear. And the reason is because the man who was walking close to me suddenly pulled up a knife. So the man was walking close to me and then from nowhere he just pulled a knife from his pocket or his bag, but he suddenly pulled up a knife and he ordered me to hand all my belongings to him. To hand all my belongings means to give him all my belongings. Your belongings are your possessions, the things that you have with you. Maybe your bag, your laptop, okay, your watch, your mobile phone. Those are your belongings, the things that belong to you, your possessions. Or else he would stab me to death. Now, to stab someone is to put a knife in their body, okay? You stab someone by putting a knife in a part of their body. Now, let's move on to sample answer 2. Again, you can see in sample answer 1, I used a number of linking words. You can see them in blue: when, who, and. Let's look at sample answer 2. Why were you scared? My best friend James and I were both scared out of our wits as we heard the sound of a gunshot towards the end of the dark alley, which we were approaching on our way back home after a night out clubbing. My best friend James and I were both scared out of our wits as we heard the sound of a gunshot towards the end of the dark alley, which we were approaching on our way back home after a night out clubbing. So in the second sample answer, I explained to the examiner why I was scared. You know, my best friend and James and I, we were both scared out of our wits. To be scared out of your wits is to be extremely terrified, extremely fearful, okay? And the reason we were scared is because we heard the sound of a gunshot. We heard someone shooting a gun towards the end of the dark alley. Now, what is an alley actually? An alley is a very narrow path, okay? A very, very, very narrow path, okay? In which you walk, okay? Maybe, let's say, for example, between two buildings, okay? You have that narrow space, very, very narrow, okay? That is an alley. And if it is dark, it means that there is no light there. So you're walking down this very, very, very narrow space, narrow path, which is very dark. And if you hear a gunshot at the end of that alley, which is really dark, you will be scared out of your wits, meaning that you will be absolutely terrified. And we were we were returning back home after a night out clubbing. Now, if you go clubbing, it means that, you know, you go to a club to dance, okay, to have some drinks, okay, at night. Now, let's move on to question D. How you felt about it. How you felt about it. Now, in this question, the examiner wants you to explain your feelings. How did you feel? Now, to answer this question, you can say sample answer 1. When the man threatened to stab me to death, I was so terrified that my heart almost missed a beat. I could barely breathe as I stood there shaking like a leaf, feeling absolutely helpless and vulnerable. That man had scared the daylights out of me, so I just decided to give him all my belongings so that he could leave me in peace. When the man threatened to stab me to death, I was so terrified that my heart almost missed a beat. I could barely breathe as I stood there shaking like a leaf, feeling absolutely helpless and vulnerable. That man had scared the daylights out of me, so I just decided to give him all my belongings so that he could leave me in peace. Now, in that first sample answer, I have explained in details actually how I felt. I was so terrified. Now, to be terrified is to be absolutely scared. I was so terrified that my heart almost missed a beat. So I have used an idiomatic expression there that we have in English, and that is my heart almost missed a beat. Now, when you say that my heart almost missed a beat, it means that you are so scared that your heart almost stopped. Your heart almost stopped beating. I used another idiomatic expression there. I could barely breathe. So I could hardly. Barely means hardly. I could hardly breathe as I stood there shaking like a leaf. Now, the idiomatic expression shaking like a leaf means that you were trembling. You are shaking like a leaf. You are trembling so much. I also used another idiomatic expression, scared the daylights out of me. That man had scared the daylights out of me. Now, the idiomatic expression, scared the daylights out of me, means that he scared me so much. And then I used the linking words that, and, so that. You can see them in blue. And finally, I use the expression, leave me in peace. When you say to somebody, please leave me in peace, it means that you're asking the person not to bother you anymore. So I gave this man all my belongings, that is all the things that I was carrying, so that he could leave me in peace, so that he could leave me alone, because he had threatened to stab me to death. He had threatened to kill me. Now, let's move on to sample answer 2. How you felt about it. When I heard the deafening sound of the gunshot, my first thought was to run for my life, but then I was so overwhelmed with fear as a chill ran down my spine that all I could do was scream as I broke into a cold sweat. My heart was in my mouth as I saw my friend James pass out in sheer terror. When I heard the deafening sound of the gunshot, my first thought was to run for my life, but then I was so overwhelmed with fear as a chill ran down my spine that all I could do was scream as I broke into a cold sweat. My heart was in my mouth as I saw my friend James pass out in sheer terror. Now, in the second sample answer, I explained in details how I felt about it. When I heard the deafening sound of the gunshot. Deafening means that it was very, very loud. My first thought was to run for my life. Now, the expression to run for your life is to run to save your life, to save yourself from death. Okay? I was so overwhelmed with fear, means that I was so fearful. I could not think straight. I was overwhelmed. It was too much. As a chill ran down my spine. This idiomatic expression, a chill ran down my spine, means that you are so terrified that you almost froze. You are almost frozen on the spot. A chill ran down your spine. You are almost frozen because you're so scared. And then I used the idiomatic expression, I broke into a cold sweat. Now, to break into a cold sweat is to be extremely scared, okay? You're so scared that you start sweating. You're terrified. My heart was in my mouth. When we say my heart was in my mouth, it also means that I was shaking. I was terrified. I was fearful. Okay, so as you can see, I have used so many different idiomatic expressions and they all mean the same thing. I was so terrified. I was so fearful. My heart was in my mouth. Okay, and then I used the phrasal verb to pass out. I saw my friend James pass out. To pass out is to faint. To pass out is to faint. Now, let's move on to part 3 questions. Question 1. Is it okay to frighten others? Is it okay to frighten others? In this question, the examiner wants to know whether it is okay to frighten people, is it good to make other people scared? Is it good? Is it a good idea to make other people scared? Now, you can answer that question by saying sample answer 1. Not at all. Scaring others and making them have a pit in their stomach is awful because it could lead to someone injuring themselves or getting a heart attack, which could become fatal. Not at all. Scaring others and making them have a pit in their stomach is awful because it could lead to someone injuring themselves or getting a heart attack, which could become fatal. Now, in that first sample answer, I told the examiner I don't think it is okay. It's not at all means absolutely not. And the reason because of that is scaring others and making them have a pit in their stomach. The idiomatic expression to have a pit in your stomach means to be very scared. Okay? To feel very, very nervous. To have a pit in your stomach is to feel extremely nervous. Okay, I don't think it's a good idea. I think it's awful. I think it's awful means terrible. The word awful means terrible. And because it could lead to someone, it could make someone get injured or have a heart attack. When you get a heart attack, it means that your heart stops. And that could become fatal. Fatal means deadly. It could become deadly. To get a heart attack is when your heart stops beating. Now, let's look at sample answer 2. Is it okay to frighten others? Not everyone has nerves of steel, so making others frightened could have detrimental emotional effects, such as making someone nervous, paranoid, or always fearful. Not everyone has nerves of steel, so making others frightened could have detrimental emotional effects, such as making someone nervous, paranoid, or always fearful. Now, in that second sample answer, I told the examiner that, not everyone has nerves of steel. Now, if you have nerves of steel, it means that you're a very, very courageous person. You're very brave. You don't get scared easily because you have nerves of steel. It could have detrimental emotional effects. So I don't think it's a good idea to, to frighten others because, not everyone has nerves of steel. Not everyone is courageous and bold and very brave, So making others, it could have detrimental. Detrimental means destructive, counterproductive. Emotional has to do with your feelings. Like, for example, it could make somebody nervous. When you're nervous, it means that you're really scared. It could make you paranoid. If you're paranoid, it means that you're always, very, very, very nervous and thinking that something bad is going to happen to you. You're paranoid. You always think someone is trying to get you. Someone is trying to attack you. You're very paranoid. And the word fearful means scared. Now, let's move on to question 2 of part 3. How do people react when they are frightened? How do people react when they are frightened? In this question, the examiner wants you to explain to him or her some of the things that people do when they're scared. Now, to answer this question, you can say sample answer 1. Most people are scared witless when they are frightened, which makes them scream their hearts out, run for their life, or simply close their eyes, waiting for the worst. Others have been known to pass out, paralyzed with fear, feeling scared to death. Most people are scared witless when they are frightened, which makes them scream their hearts out, run for their life, or simply close their eyes waiting for the worst. Others have been known to pass out, paralyzed with fear, feeling scared to death. So in that first sample answer, I have to explain to the examiner some of the things that people do when they're scared. You know, most people means majority of the people. When they are scared witless, okay? Most people are scared witless. Now, if you're scared witless, it means that you're scared to death. You're so scared that you think you're going to die, okay? It makes them scream their hearts out. Idiomatic expression, to scream your heart out, it means to scream very loudly, to shout very loudly, to scream your heart out. It means to shout very loudly. To run for your life, that is run for their life, to run for your life is to run away as fast as your legs can carry you to save your life. You don't want to die, so you run for your life. You run very, very, very fast. The next expression that I've used actually is a phrasal verb, to pass out. It means to faint. The next one is paralyzed with fear. That is an idiomatic expression. If you're paralyzed with fear, it means that you are so scared you can't move an inch. You are stuck in one place. You are paralyzed. You can't move because you're so terrified. You're so scared. And then the last expression that I use to be scared to death is to be so terrified because you think you're going to die. Let's move on to sample answer 2. People react differently when they're scared. Some tend to stay calm and collected, whilst others shake in their boots, trembling like a leaf consumed with fear. How do people react when they're frightened? People react differently when they're scared. Some tend to stay calm and collected, whilst others shake in their boots, trembling like a leaf consumed with fear. Now, in that second sample answer, I have explained to the examiner that people react differently when they're scared. Some people stay calm and collected. Now, if you stay calm and collected, it means that you do not react to whatever is going on around you. You stay calm. You're not shaken at all. It doesn't bother you. You stay cool and collected. Whilst others, remember I told you the linking word whilst means while others, they shake in their boots, trembling like a leaf. Now, if you shake in your boots, it means that you start, trembling. Your body starts moving very, 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 very fast. Okay, your body starts making very, very, very fast movements. You're shaking. To shake in your boots is to be very, very terrified. Trembling like a leaf is shaking. Consumed with fear. Consumed with fear means absolutely terrified. Now, let's move on to question 3. When do people get frightened? When do people get frightened? Now, in this question, the examiner wants you to give him or her some situations, identify some situations in life when people get frightened. When do they get frightened? Now, to answer this question, you can say sample answer 1. There are different situations that could lead to people getting scared. For instance, when they are physically attacked by a thief, threatened by a burglar, or intimidated by a bully. Others simply get scared when they do something wrong. There are different situations that could lead to people getting scared. For instance, when they're physically attacked by a thief, threatened by a burglar, or intimidated by a bully. Others simply get scared when they do something wrong. So, in that first sample answer, I have identified different situations that could make people get scared. The first one is when they are physically attacked. When you're physically attacked by a thief, someone who wants to steal from you, when they attack you, they hit you, you get scared. Or when you're threatened by a burglar. Now, a burglar is somebody who breaks into your house to steal something. That is a burglar. Or intimidated. When you're intimidated by somebody, it means that you're threatened by somebody. A bully. A bully is somebody who picks on another person because they think the other person is weaker. Okay, a bully. When you bully people, it means that you pick on them. You know, you hit them, you abuse them verbally, you abuse them emotionally because you think they are weaker than you are. Now, let's look at sample answer 2. When do people get frightened? Some people get frightened when they walk in the dark alone, while others are scared of heights. For example, when they walk on a high bridge, horror movies, or even dogs such as bulldogs and Rottweilers. Some people get frightened when they walk in the dark alone, whilst others are scared of heights. For example, when they walk on a high bridge, horror movies, or even dogs such as bulldogs and Rottweilers. So in that second sample answer, I have explained to the examiner when people get frightened, when they walk in the dark alone. You know, if you're walking in darkness all by yourself, there's a chance you will get terrified. If some people are also scared of heights, you know, for example, when they walk on a high bridge. If you're scared of heights, it means that you don't like things that are very, very, very high. Some people are scared of horror movies, and some people are scared of dogs, such as bulldogs and Rottweilers. Now, let's move on to question 4. Why is it easier to scare some people? Why is it easier to scare some people? In this question, the examiner wants you to explain to him or her some of the reasons as to why some people are easier, or why is it that some people get easily scared than others? Some people stay calm, some people get scared every single time. Why? Now, to answer this question, you can say sample answer 1. It is easier to frighten certain people because they might have a phobia for something such as flying in a plane, or perhaps they're just paranoid individuals who lack self-confidence. It is easier to frighten certain people because they might have a phobia for something such as flying in a plane, or perhaps they're just paranoid individuals who lack self-confidence. So in this first sample answer, I have given the examiner some reasons to explain why some people are easier to get, to scare than others. And that is because, they might have a phobia for something. If you have a phobia for something, it means that there is something that scares you. For example, flying in a plane. Some people get so terrified when they have to fly in a plane. Or maybe they're just paranoid individuals. If you're a paranoid person, it means that you are a very nervous person. You always think that something bad is going to happen to you, that somebody is going to attack you. It's just in your mind all the time. Now, if you lack self-confidence, it means that you don't have self-confidence. You don't believe in yourself, you're not a brave person. You are a nervous person. You are not a confident person. You lack self-confidence. Now, let's move on to sample answer 2. Why is it easier to scare some people? It's much easier to frighten certain individuals because they might have had a scary life-threatening experience in the past, which has scared them for life, making them fearful individuals. It's much easier to frighten certain individuals because they might have had a scary life-threatening experience in the past, which has scared them for life, making them fearful individuals. So in that second sample answer, I explained to the examiner why it's easier to scare certain people, because they might have had a scary, life-threatening experience in the past. Maybe in the past something bad has happened to them that nearly cost them their life. They nearly died, and that has scarred them for life. To be scarred for life is an idiomatic expression, which means that you're traumatized for life. You're traumatized for life. And the other word that I've used there is fearful. To be fearful is to be scared. Now, let's move on to the last question, and that is question 5. What should people do when they feel scared? What should people do when they feel scared? Now, in that question, the examiner wants you to give him or her some of the things. Just tell him or her some of the things that you think people should do. What should you do when you get fearful, when you're terrified of something? What should you do? Now, you can answer that question by saying sample answer 1. When people feel extremely frightened, I think they should scream, run as fast as they can, or try to raise an alarm by yelling at the top of their lungs so that someone can come to their rescue. When people feel extremely frightened, I think they should scream, run as fast as they can, or try to raise an alarm by yelling at the top of their lungs so that someone can come to their rescue. So in that first sample answer, I explained to the examiner some of the things that I think people should do when they feel afraid. They should scream. To scream means to yell. They should run as fast as they can. To run as fast as you can is to run, very, very, very fast, as much as your legs can allow you. I also use the expression to raise an alarm. To raise an alarm is to alert somebody by yelling at the top of your lungs. To yell is to scream at the top of your lungs as hard as you can so that someone can come to help you, come to your rescue. Come to their rescue means come to help them. Now, let's look at sample answer 2. What should people do when they feel scared? When terrified, one can take a deep breath to help them stay calm, pray if they are religious, or call for help from neighbors. They can also dial the emergency telephone number in their country. When terrified, one can take a deep breath to help them stay calm, pray if they are religious, or call for help from neighbors. They can also dial the emergency telephone number in their countries. When terrified, one can take a deep breath to help them stay calm, pray if they are religious, or call for help from neighbors. They can also dial the emergency telephone number in their country. Now, in that second sample answer, I explained to the examiner some of the things that I think people should do when they are scared. They can take a deep breath. To take a deep breath is to breathe in and out in order to help you, to stay calm. They can also pray if they are religious. They believe in God. You can pray when you're terrified. To be terrified is to be scared. Or you can call for help from your neighbor. Call for help from neighbors. Your neighbor is the person who lives next to you. You can call for help. Also, you can dial the emergency telephone number in your country. In most countries, you can dial the emergency telephone number if you're scared of something, if something has happened to you, and usually the number is 999. So there you go. That's how you're supposed to answer these questions. Remember, if you're aiming for band 9, then you need to make sure that you use a lot of complex and compound sentences in your answers. You notice that my sentences are very long in my answers. The reason I do that is because I'm giving you band 9 answers, which means that I have to use a lot of complex sentences. And for you to use a complex sentence, you need to use at least 2 or more linking words. You can also use compound sentences if you're aiming for band 8, for example. Remember, a compound sentence has just 1 linking word. Also, make sure that you use the correct vocabulary for the topic that you're talking about. In this case, I have explained all the vocabulary that I have used in this lesson. I have also highlighted all the vocabulary in red for you to see. Now, remember also to use the correct tense, use the correct grammar, use good subject-verb agreement, use prepositions correctly, use plural and singular correctly, for example, and also make sure that your answers are detailed and very well elaborated. And most importantly, listen to the examiner very carefully so that you understand the question and answer the question that you have been asked. And of course, try to make sure that you are as fluent as possible. You improve your fluency through practice. Read these sample answers aloud. Repeat the sample answers after me. That's why I usually say the sample answers twice. Now, if you're going to be sitting for your IELTS speaking test in the near future, I wish you all the best. Remember to subscribe to this channel, like this video, and share this video with somebody else so that you can also help them. Now, thank you very much, everyone, and I shall see you in our next lesson. Bye-bye.